Welcome to the Disney Wedding Podcast. This show is brought to you by Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, the only guidebook and bridal organizer tailored exclusively to Disney's fairy tale weddings at Walt Disney World. I'm Carrie Hayward, and each week I feature Disney wedding updates, money-saving tips, and interviews with wedding vendors and real Disney couples. I also cover honeymoons, anniversaries, and engagements at the Disney parks and resorts. Join me now as the Disney Wedding Podcast celebrates romance at Disney destinations. Today on the Disney Wedding Podcast, I am speaking with Disney bride Amanda Caseiro about her ceremony at the Wedding Pavilion with a reception at St. Augustine A through C at the Grand Floridian Convention Center. I thought you guys would be interested to hear how she chose these locations and how she planned everything and how it all turned out. So welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being on the show today. I always like to start at the very beginning and find out how you and your fiancé decided that you wanted to have your wedding at Disney.
Okay, so having a Disney wedding was a no-brainer for me and my husband, Michael. We actually did the Disney College program back in 2012, and that's how we met because I'm from California and Michael's from Massachusetts. So I always like to say without Disney, we never would have met. We were originally planning for an Alani wedding. When I say planning, we were just in the very beginning talks with Alani, going kind of back and forth on whether we were going to officially lock down with them. But after talking to our families, especially Michael's family being from Massachusetts, it just seemed like a really big ask to have people travel out to Hawaii, and a lot of our family are hesitant on traveling. So the idea of sending them on a plane all the way over to Hawaii just seemed like a big ask, and it seemed like we were going to get a lot less people than we would have wanted, and we really wanted to prioritize our families being able to come to the wedding. So we decided on switching over to a Walt Disney World wedding, just so that it was fair, because even though my family lives close to Disneyland, it just seemed like it would be really fun to have my family travel out and Michael's family travel down from Massachusetts, and then we could show them where we worked and lived for a few years. And so really it was always going to be at Disney. It was just a matter of where in Disney. And so we did eventually settle on Walt Disney World.
That's interesting. Okay. So then it sounds like your friends and family were not at all surprised when they found out where the wedding was going to be?
No, I don't think so. I think they always knew that it was going to be at Disney and it wasn't going to be something local. I know my family was personally hoping that it was going to be at Disneyland, but I don't think they were really surprised when we settled on Disney World at all. And I think people were quite relieved when we chose Disney World over Hawaii.
Now, how many guests did you invite and how many were able to make the trip?
We invited about 75 people, and we knew that not all of them were going to come. But we ended up getting 39, which I think was more than we initially anticipated. I had family from California and Washington come out, and almost all of my family came down. A lot of Michael's family was able to attend as well, so that was really nice to be surrounded by all of our family and to be able to introduce so many of them for the first time since they live so far away.
That's wonderful. Did you set up a room block for your guests?
We did. So we initially decided that we were going to do 3 different resorts at a value. So we had decided on All-Star Music because that's generally where Michael and I like to stay when we're on a budget-friendly trip. And then we also decided on Caribbean Beach and the Polynesian. The Polynesian is very important to us. We were having a very tropical wedding, so we knew that Michael and I were going to at least stay there for part of our trip, as well as some of my family. And then we liked to have a middle of the line, which we were surprised that a lot more people stayed at Caribbean Beach than All-Star Music. We still did have a good crowd at All-Star Music, but then we also decided to add in kind of last minute Pop Century just so people could take the Skyliner, and we did have quite a few people who stayed there as well. So it was a good mix, and I think it was kind of fun to have everybody kind of staying at their own places because we would catch up in the parks or at the wedding and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we have this at our hotel or we have this. And so it was nice to hear about everybody's different experiences and how excited they were to be staying at what worked for them.
That's great. Now, how did you guys choose the day of the week and time of day for your event?
So that was like something that I was like, how do people pick wedding dates? Like, and we knew we were going to want to do a summer wedding because, again, we were doing a tropical vibe for our wedding. So we wanted to have like nice summer atmosphere and weather. And I'm a teacher. So, like, my days that I could take off are limited to like summer if I wanted to do a longer trip. So we were really looking at July and August, and it was Michael who decided that we were going to get married on August 16th because he recognized that it was a pattern of 8/16/24. So it was like a nice happy number that we could always remember. And then as far as the time goes, we're not like morning people, I would say. So it was just, I think, a lot more comfortable for us and our guests to have the 5 p.m. ceremony time. And it tends to be like what all of our families' weddings have had up here is like evening weddings and receptions, sometimes early morning, but that's just not our vibe. So we went with the afternoon, evening kind of so that we could take all morning to get ready and take our time and not feel rushed and then enjoy our celebration into the evening.
That's great. How did you choose your ceremony and reception venues?
That was something that because we were getting married in August in Florida, which we're very familiar with the summer times down in Florida, and it's very humid and hot, and you have the chance of rain all the time. We knew we wanted to do something indoors. Initially, we were looking at the old Polynesian venue that was then demolished to make room for the new towers. That was like, I had my heart set on that for so long. But with that, we kind of had to change things. And so the Wedding Pavilion was definitely our second choice once they got rid of that Polynesian venue. And it's a bonus because it's indoors and it's air conditioned, so you don't have to worry about the weather affecting as much and getting moved to a new location because that would have stressed me out. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Wedding Pavilion. It's just so gorgeous inside and looking through the windows and seeing the castle in the background. It's just absolutely stunning and you don't need much decor in there. So that was like a no-brainer. And then the reception venue, I think, just came naturally. We wanted to have a ballroom so that we would have the freedom to use outside vendors if we wanted to. So that allowed us to have a lot more freedom so that we could play with our budget a little bit more. And also, it allowed just convenience for our guests. They were able to just walk right on over, or if they had a rental car, just easily drive over and not have to like navigate around the Disney property.
Got it. So how did you choose your outside vendors?
So, a lot of the vendors that I found, I did a lot of research through not only the wedding podcast site and the Facebook groups, but I also looked on websites like The Knot. And so I kind of, certain vendors, like I knew, like I had seen Catherine Tiamundi all over the place as an officiant, and she is just so magical. She's got the cutest accent, and she just has this personality that's like a fairy godmother come to life. So I knew from the start that like she was my top pick, and it was just a matter of like hoping that she was available for our day, and she was. So that was amazing. So I found her initially through the Facebook groups because I'd seen a lot of her videos, and she also is on there like celebrating the brides she's had, and I love that kind of personal touch that she does. Maria Raboli, our photographer, I found through Instagram. And she just has this kind of retro vintage vibe that I think went really well with the vision that we had for our tropical atmosphere. And she was just so lovely to work with. And then Sky from Perfect Sky is one of the recommended Disney videographers. And initially, we were considering doing a park shoot and having a videographer come along. So it was important to me in the initial onset of planning that I have somebody that in case we went that route, we could bring the videographer along. And he was just awesome to work with. He really tried to build a custom package for us that was within our budget and really fit like how many people we were having at our wedding. So that made things so easy on us. And floral and linen design was actually somebody that Michael found. So I'm not quite sure how he came across her.
Got it. Okay. Did you guys add any kind of entertainment to the ceremony or the reception?
We did not, besides our DJ. I had considered it a few times, but when we really thought about like having our family together, we really wanted them to be able to intermingle and be able to converse with each other and get to know one another without like the distractions of entertainment. I think if we had that, it would have just been like another thing that could have like pulled people away from one another. And so I don't really have any regrets of not adding anything on besides our DJ. Chuck Johnson was awesome at getting our family out and dancing, even though we didn't think that they were going to be a big dancing crowd. And so that was enough for us.
Okay. Do you have any menu items or cake flavors from the reception that you would recommend?
Our menu, we actually were not ever able to go down for the menu tastings and talk with the chefs. So our planners were able to help arrange a virtual meeting with our chef who helped design a menu kind of customized for our vision. It was really important that we had this like tropical theme that I've talked about. And so we did have like some kind of standard cocktail hour foods. Like we had the cheeseburger egg rolls because that's just fun. How could you pass up cheeseburger egg rolls? And then we had a couple of the initial ones that they have just for people who are like kind of picky eaters. So we had the antipasto bites and those were a hit. And the shrimp ceviche was just phenomenal. But we also asked for like crab rangoons because those weren't on the menu. And so they made those for us. So all of our cocktail hour things were really good. But what really shined was our dinner buffet. So we had initially started with like this kind of hodgepodge mix of items, and we met with Chef Joe and we were like, what can we do to like really bring this together and kind of create a tropical vibe? Because we love going to Ohana. That's where we had our reception dinner. And we didn't want to like necessarily replicate the menu, but we kind of wanted to take a couple of our favorite Disney items. So we asked for the salad that's from Sebastian's Bistro because it has a wonderful key lime dressing. We also asked for the sustainable fish from Skipper Canteen. And so we kind of asked him to build a menu around that, some kind of chicken option and a steak option. So he came up with these great flavors. He did a huli huli chicken and a chimichurri steak for us, as well as this seafood curry chowder that like was the hit of the night. Everybody just kept raving about this. And I'm going to need to reach out to Disney and see if they can send me this recipe because everybody just loved it so much. It was so good. So I guess it's not necessarily like what flavors I would recommend, but just like don't be afraid to like reach out to Disney and like see what they can do because we were just pleasantly surprised with how well they worked to meet what we wanted and what we envisioned. And it really wasn't like out of range for our budget. It was very close to what the standard buffet price is. And so it was really nice to be able to say, this was made for our wedding. And I just want other people to know that that's an option.
That's great. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that the menus that their planner sends them, which are just sample menus, that's it, when in fact you can completely customize anything. And I do have all the past sample menus from Disney's Fairy Tale Weddings for like the last 10 or 15 years on my Fairy Tale Weddings Guide website to help people kind of get their creative juices flowing and see what sort of things they might want to mix and match.
Yeah, that was what really inspired me to even reach out and ask like what else they could do beyond that. So that was incredibly helpful to have as inspiration.
That's great. Do you have any cake flavors you would recommend?
We were able to go and get a tasting kit from the bakery, which was really helpful to try flavors. We were personally big fans of the orange cake with the tropical mousse. It just really brought that Florida kind of flavor to it, and it was light and refreshing. It also fit our tropical theme to have that kind of flavor profile, but we weren't as big on the cake. We ended up getting like a smaller cake to save on the budget. So it wasn't something that we did end up sharing with family. So that was kind of like a personal selection between Michael and I. So I guess I should backtrack. So we actually also worked with Chef Joe to create a dessert sampling. So we had Ohana bread pudding, some key lime tarts, and a mango cheesecake that was from Animal Kingdom. So that was kind of already out for our guests. And like, I just know from when I go to weddings, I feel like I fill up on food and cake isn't always like the priority. So we wanted to have like a smaller cake that was for Michael and I to have the cake cutting moment and to share that between ourselves. And then our guests did enjoy some of the desserts, but I think they were so full from our cocktail hour appetizers and our buffet that when the dessert buffet came out, they were like, oh my gosh, they were stuffed.
Did you add a dessert party or a welcome party to your day?
We didn't. It was something that I had considered a couple times. I just feel like you see so many brides that are doing it, and it seems to be just a more common thing. But adding an extra event just didn't seem like it worked for us or our guests. It seemed like it would be a little bit too much for us to take on. Plus, like we had a lot of family who hadn't experienced the parks yet. And so we kind of prioritized spending any extra time with our family. And so we really wanted to stick to just like the main event of having a ceremony and reception, and then all of the other surrounding days, we just kind of bounced around the parks with our families, which was really nice.
That's wonderful. Can you give my listeners a timeline of how the wedding day ran?
Yeah, so it was actually surprising to me with having a 5 p.m. ceremony, how early you have to start things. So I'm like really thankful that I didn't do anything earlier because we had our hair and makeup team start at 9 a.m. and there was really only, besides me, three other girls who were getting their hair and makeup done. And so we got ready at 9 a.m. and then Sky and Maria, the videographer and photographer, came between like 2 and 2:30, which was like just about when I was starting to finish up. So they were able to get those like nice touches of me getting my makeup done. I started putting on my dress around 3 o'clock, with my family photos being between around 3:20 to 3:45. Michael's family photo started a little bit sooner at 2:45. So we did actually have like a second videographer and photographer that were working underneath Maria and Sky. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier that we had a vintage car company, Cole's Classic Cars, come and pick us up in a white Cadillac convertible from 1947 that was just gorgeous and fit in with our tropical theme really nicely. It looked stunning in photos. So they came and picked Michael up around 4:15 and hauled him away over to the Wedding Pavilion. And then they circled back and came back for me at around 4:30, which of course it only takes a couple minutes to get over there. So I got to hang out in the lovely bridal suite for a little bit until 5 o'clock when our ceremony started, which pretty much started at 5 o'clock right on the dot. And then we finished around 5:30, I want to say. It was not an exceedingly long ceremony. And then we stayed behind, did a few family pictures while our guests went over to cocktail hour, which started at 6 o'clock. Cocktail hour went from 6 to 7. Our photographer was great at making sure we like got all our family pictures, got all of mine and Michael's pictures done. So we were able to get over to our cocktail hour and enjoy some of those delicious appetizers. And then our reception went from 7 to 11.
Got it. What ended up being your favorite memory of your wedding day?
Oh my gosh, it is so hard to pick because everything just went so perfectly. Like I could say it was getting ready with my mom and sister, but like then of course there's me walking down the aisle and seeing Michael for the first time, and his reaction was just so sweet because we didn't do a first look. I wanted that natural, authentic experience of him seeing me go down the aisle for the first time, which was just, it felt so surreal in the moment. So that was definitely one of the most memorable pieces of the day. But I think something that was like also really special to me was that at the end of the night, like after the reception had ended, we were staying at the Polynesian, and we love Trader Sam's, and we got there with like 10 minutes to spare before they closed. And so we like really kindly went and asked the hostess if we could just come in, maybe take some pictures, maybe grab a drink to go if it wasn't like too much of a problem. But we really just wanted to try and get some pictures in there because we had asked the managers earlier in the week if we could take some like getting ready photos in there or just like our individual shots in there. And they were so kind, but it unfortunately didn't work out with our timing and theirs because that's like when they're prepping to open, and they were like, it just wouldn't look great for your photos. It would just be way too chaotic for you guys. And so like we were fine with that, but then the hostess remembered us coming in and asking, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, let me go see if like they don't mind." And so she went and asked the team, and they all were like so welcoming and welcomed us in. So my sister was able to take some like photos of us in Trader Sam's, and the bartenders and staff there, the cast members were all just so kind and lovely, and like it just felt like this mini celebration that was like so private and intimate. And I'm really glad we even tried because I was almost like hesitant of not doing it, but it was just like that extra sprinkle of Disney magic at the end that just made my night. It was just this like cherry on top of the perfect day because everything else was just so wonderful. And just to get that last little magic touch in before bed was just so wonderful.
What a great memory. Now, when you guys were planning, what were some of the most important aspects where you focused your attention or your budget?
I feel like I've talked about it so much, but our theme and having this tropical theme was so important to us. We loved the tiki room. So that was kind of like our basis was we wanted to have like florals that made you feel like you were in the tiki room. So florals were really important to us, not so much in the wedding pavilion, but in the reception, we wanted to bring it to life because if you see any of those ballrooms, they are beautiful, but how you bring floral in can really help to create the space and make it your own. So that was really important to us. And I really have no regrets on what we spent with our floral budget. Our vendor, Linen and Florals Design, they also did our chairs and our uplighting. And so they were able to kind of make it very cohesive and they really brought our vision to life. So that is just something that like was above and beyond our expectations. Another important aspect to us was the food. So I had already talked about meeting with Chef Joe, and he really, again, brought that vision to life and did just more than we could have ever expected. And I think for the third most important would be the location. So if we couldn't have the Polynesian, I think it was still important that we had some kind of like tropical feel. And the Grand Floridian does have those palm trees outside, and just the wedding pavilion itself is so gorgeous that you don't have to go all out decorating that venue. And there's so many outside places to take photos that are just so stunning that I would say that those were our top three.
Got it. Okay. Were there any aspects that were less important where you saved your money or just your effort?
Yeah, so decorating the wedding pavilion, we had initially worked with Disney Floral and we had a quote for all these decor items in the wedding pavilion, and then I like took a step back and I said, "You know what? Like the wedding pavilion is just so pretty on its own. Like you really don't need to do much in that space." And I'm so glad we didn't because I feel like it almost would have taken away from the wedding pavilion and our guests were just so stunned with it on its own. So I really don't think you have to do a lot there. And I know that that definitely saved us quite a bit of money not having a lot. We just did a small altar arrangement that we then had transferred to our sweetheart table. So it really wasn't too expensive to have decor in there. Also, entertainment wasn't something that was really high on our priority. We did go through different ideas like having the uninvited guests come or maybe inviting some outside entertainment to come and perform like hula dancers we had gotten in contact with. But again, we just really wanted to focus on having that time with our family and letting them have the chance to get to know each other because I don't know when our family will ever get together again from the two different states all at one time. So it really wasn't important to us to have anything besides a DJ for like background ambiance to get some party vibes going with dancing. And Chuck did a wonderful job with that. So we really didn't need any outside entertainment besides that. And then lastly, I think the cake was just not as important for us. We had initially received a quote back, and it was just not within our budget. I don't want to say it was astronomical, but it just wasn't within our budget. And we kept thinking of the idea of asking for a little buffet of desserts, and they were able to make that work within our budget, doing the buffet of desserts. So we I made the cake a lot smaller, so it was just mine and Michael's cake, and it was a lot more intimate that way. And we were able to save a lot of money, and then we weren't worried about wasting all that cake. So it ended up working out beautifully for us.
That's fantastic. Now, did anything go wrong or just not turn out like you expected?
Something that did go wrong, I mean, the day was itself was absolutely perfect, but in our planning, we ran into some hiccups because as of 2024, Disney dissolved the Reedy Creek department. And so we wanted to have a hedge wall behind our sweetheart table that was decorated with tropical florals to kind of almost make it feel like we were a little bit outside. And I had my heart set on this for so long, but because Disney was no longer in charge of their own permitting, we had to go through the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District in order to get that hedge wall approved because it was over 6 feet, and anything over 6 feet needed to get approved with a permit. And so our florist was handling this task of trying to get a hold of the people from the oversight district. And she was trying for so long with no responses from them. I think it was probably a couple months of her trying and reaching out and not getting through to anybody over the phone or getting emails sent back to her. So she finally reached back out to us and asked if we could ask our Disney contacts if they had any insight as to how to get in touch with anybody, because she tried so many of the different emails, I guess, that were on their website, and she sent us screenshots, and just nobody was getting back to her. So our planning team reached out to them and they were able to get a response right away. So I don't know if the emails that they had on their websites were incorrect or the phone numbers, but once we got that information back from our planners, our florist did start to get a little bit more of a response. But it was just kind of this game of cat and mouse where like they would call her and she would miss it. And like they were just playing phone tag back and forth. And it finally got to be the week of the wedding. And we still didn't have a crystal clear answer on if we were going to be allowed to have our hedge wall or not. And I think it was like 3 days before the wedding, they had called her at 5:10 and asked, "Oh, can you please give us a call back? Like, we need to schedule your inspection for the day of, but we have a very narrow window." But they called her at 5:10 and their office closed at 5. So she called them back right away, but immediately got a voicemail because they were calling after their hours. And so yeah, it was like the most inconvenient thing. And so she tried calling the next day, but they just had this like really narrow window on the day of. And I guess they were going back and forth, and they thought we had this bigger event that they were going to have to like leave the hedge wall there for multiple days. And so it seemed like they weren't understanding that this was just for a wedding, and like we only had a narrow amount of time to set up before the event and then take down after. And so it just didn't seem like it was working out. But our florist was just so wonderful. She did come up with this great backup plan. She had another beautiful structure that she ended up offering us instead, just so that we would have something on the what if they didn't get back to her. And it turned out like we just couldn't make it work with their timing and the fact that they didn't have, I guess, enough people to do the inspection the day of. And so like the day before the wedding, she called us and let us know like it just wasn't going to be possible and we needed to switch our option. But when we did our grand reveal, I'm actually really glad that we made the switch. As heartbreaking as it was in the moment, I think that this ended up being more perfect because it blended into our centerpieces a lot better because our centerpieces had gold. And it was also like shorter, so it allowed us to still see our beautiful castle backlight that was on our wall behind the sweetheart table. So it ended up working out perfectly, but like just the jumping through hoops and that are we going to get that answer? Are they going to call us back? Like that anticipation was killing me for so long. And so it's a shame that like Disney doesn't handle that themselves anymore because I don't think it was any fault of Disney's. I just think that it was kind of an oversight that they weren't able to get in contact with each other that entire time.
This is fascinating. So for my listeners who are not looking at the slideshow in the post for this episode on DisneyWeddingPodcast.com, what did your florist come up with as an alternative to the hedge wall?
So the alternative was like these gold arches that almost looked like window frames right behind, and she still like was able to add the florals onto them because we did use real florals. I think it would have been a problem if we used silks, but because they were real florals, we were still allowed to have them. So it ended up being a really nice contrast to the florals having that gold in there, and then it also blended into the like I said, the centerpieces and complemented those better. So basically like these arches that looked like windows, but they were, I think, just underneath that 6 feet mark, so we were able to have them without having to get it cleared. So just beware of that 6 feet mark if you're having anything fancy behind your head table.
Was there anything that seemed like a big deal beforehand or you were worried about and then it turned out not to be a big deal?
I think it was just more my own worries of like, it's so hard being from Massachusetts and having to trust your planners and your vendors that everything is going to go well the day of, because you sit there and you worry, like, what if this happens? What if this happens? And you kind of get in your own head a lot. And I think none of those worries even mattered because everything just went so well. Like, our vendors were all just so professional and handled everything so beautifully and blew our expectations out of the water that it was like, I almost feel silly for worrying so much up until the day of because it just came out so wonderfully.
That's great to hear. Is there anything you would have done differently knowing what you know now?
Looking back, I wish I added like an extra hour or two to our reception. I didn't realize how short it would actually feel at first. I thought 7 to 11, like standard hours of reception would be like perfect for us, like short and sweet. But like everybody ended up sticking around until the end. And it almost just felt like between all the different events, the cake cutting, the parent dances, our photographer pulled us outside to go see the fireworks so we could get those photos. It just didn't feel like we had as much time as we would have wanted to spend with everybody. So I think just adding that extra hour or two on would have been nice to spend with our family. Of course, we wouldn't have had that magical moment at Trader Sam's, but I just think that that would have helped to extend that moment and be able to spend more time with our family and friends because it was so fun to see different people from our families coming together that we didn't know if they would interact at all. And like they were having so much fun together. And it's like, I wish I could have experienced that more. So that's like the only thing I would have changed.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because you didn't have a ton of extra entertainment. And I know a lot of times people worry that just the standard length of reception will be too boring if they don't add 15 different things. So that's interesting to hear you say that you didn't add any of that and you still didn't think it was long enough.
I mean, I know that just like, I think that works with my family because we are like the life of the party. Like our family, we just have so many different characters. So I think for them, like they're the entertainment enough as it is. So for other people, I can totally get why that would be the perfect amount of time if you're not doing extra entertainment. But for our families to come together and like interact when they never have, and we don't know if when or if they will again, like it was just so nice to see that they were all interacting and they made the magic themselves. They really did.
That's great. Do you have any other tips or advice for future Disney couples?
I think my biggest advice would be to not worry about comparing yourself and what you want and what is in your budget with like what everybody else is doing. I think I kind of got stuck doing that for a while, saying, oh my gosh, I should get the Cinderella carriage, or I should get other entertainment. I should have a dessert party because you see all of these brides doing it and it feels like you should too. But really like know yourself, know your guests, what works well for you guys because we never really wanted the Cinderella carriage, but like other brides just look so stunning coming in on it that I was like, maybe I do, maybe I don't, maybe I do, maybe I don't. But going with the classic car, like, worked better with our budget. It looked better in our photos. It fit better with our theme. So just like know what vision it is that you want and really try and communicate that with your vendors as clearly as you can. A lot of these vendors are just so willing to work with you and have extra meetings to make sure your vision is perfect. And even our Disney planners, reach out to them. And if there is like a lot of concerns that you're having, which Michael and I did have like a lot of questions, a lot of things that we wanted to change at different times. And they were always willing to jump on a phone call or jump on a Zoom call with us so that we could talk about all of these things at once and it wasn't getting lost in a bunch of different emails. And it really helped us to feel connected to them, as well as like know that we were being heard and that our vision was being brought to life and heard. So just don't be afraid to ask. Just make sure you're polite with it, because if you're polite and kind, all these people want is to like make your day. So kindness goes a long way, and just making sure you ask and communicate your ideas clearly and just focus on what it is that you want and not worry about comparing yourself to anyone else, because this is your day and it's going to be your memories that live on. So just do what works best for you.
That's great advice. Well, Amanda, I think you've offered a lot of great tips and advice for anyone who's interested in getting married or having a vow renewal at Walt Disney World, and I appreciate your taking the time.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I really appreciate you having me on tonight.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Carrie Hayward, inviting you to join me again next week for another episode of the Disney Wedding Podcast. Past shows and tons of photos for each episode are available on my website, DisneyWeddingPodcast.com, or listen in your favorite podcast app. And for instant answers to all your Walt Disney World wedding questions, check out Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, available as an interactive ebook with continual free updates at fairytaleweddingsguide.com.